I believe we're live now, so we're going to get started. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carlos Estacio. Thank you for joining us for a very special installment of the Alumni Debate Series. And I'm the Executive Director of the Newark Debate Academy. Today, we're joined by alumni from across the country: the Bay Area Urban Debate League, the Silicon Valley Urban Debate League, and the Los Angeles Metropolitan Debate League. That's right. Today's debate is cross-organizational and features alumni from various programs that represent both the East and the West Coast. So let me introduce some of these folks before we get to it. Let's start with the commentators. Today, I'm joined by my usual co-host and NDA's Assistant Director, Devon Murphy. We're also joined by Maya Whitaker, who is the Program Director at Bottle and a proud alum from Skyline's class of 2009, as well as an alumni of San Francisco State class of 2016. On the affirmative, we have Diego J.Z. Flores, attended Bravo Medical Magnet in Los Angeles, California, and debated in Lambda for 4 years. He graduated last spring and will begin his undergraduate career at Cal State University, Long Beach in the fall. And Diego's partner, Santa Lucia Hernandez, attended Kelly High School class of 2013 and went to University of Wisconsin, Go Badgers, and currently works with the Silicon Valley UDL. And on the negative, we have Evelise Tirado, proud alumni of Science Park High School and the classroom debate director for the Newark Debate Academy. And her partner is none other than Willie Johnson, an alumni of the New York Urban Debate League, NDA's elementary and middle school debate coordinator, and the assistant director of the Rutgers University Newark Collegiate Debate Program. Our panelists are also alumni, featuring Joseph Flores from Lambda class of 2011, Chaz Weish, American History High School and Rutgers University Newark alum, and Mateo, who attended Crystal Ray and graduated this past year and will be attending Albion College in Michigan this upcoming fall. So without further ado, I'm going to hand things over to Devon, who's going to tell us about the topic, the conversation that we're going to have, and then we're going to get right to it.
Thank you, Carlos. Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us today. Police brutality has become mundane for citizens of the United States in recent years, as a number of unarmed Americans killed at the hands of police officers has maintained an alarmingly high rate for decades. Violent encounters with police have profound effects on health, neighborhoods, life chances, and politics. Compared to other developed nations like the United Kingdom, Australia, and Germany, the United States has a significantly higher number of civilians shot and killed by police. Researchers have been able to establish that human characteristics such as race, sex, and age are central to the logics that police and legal systems use to decide who to target, how to intervene, and how much force should be applied in the process of policing. And as a result, police brutality continues to intensify every year, with the United States leading the world in the number of citizens being murdered by law enforcement. Thus, our topic for the debate today is resolved. The United States federal government should enact substantial criminal justice reform in the United States in one or more of the following areas: forensic science, policing, or sentencing. Our first affirmative speaker today is Diego. So Diego, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, you have the floor.
All right, let me just get my timer for 5 minutes. Okay, I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. The first advantage is police violence. Police violence is rampant. More people are killed every day by police than are killed in a whole year in other countries. Minority groups, particularly Black men, are at the greatest risk. People 19. In the US, police officers fatally shoot 3 people per day. Black people fatally shot by the police were twice as likely as white people to be unarmed. Many studies suggest that racial biases do influence police shootings. Next. Police violence is a public health issue. The consequences spread throughout communities to create an environment of stress with cascading negative health consequences. Edwards 19. The way police operate is harmful to individual and community health. When an unarmed African-American man is killed, there's an increase in symptoms of depression and PTSD symptoms that can have cascading negative health consequences. Violent policing produces early mortality. Next. Police violence is a persistent, prevailing, and destructive force systemically killing people of color. Crump 19. Too often, the police get off, which sends the message that it's acceptable to kill people of color. Absent the privilege of legal protections and designated as a threat to society, people of color are prime targets. Over and over, police overreact from a deep-seated premise that based on implicit and explicit bias that Black people are dangerous, and the court system reinforces this notion by giving police a pass. And Even if there are more pervasive forces that continue to affect the way that police interact with minority communities, our affirmative is in direct line with demands from grassroots movements such as the Campaign Zero nonprofit organization, which proposes 10 legislations in line with defunding the police and increasing accountability in order to stop police brutality. You shouldn't view the app as a proposal that attempts to solve all police violence, but rather you should vote on the question as to whether or not our policy proposal will positively affect the status quo. Therefore, we offer the following plan. The United States federal government should require all uniformed police officers to wear body cameras and continuously record every encounter. I'm going to be moving on to solvency now. Body cameras can reduce police violence, but only a small number are currently being deployed. Stanley 15. Body cams are small cameras that record audio and video of the officers' interactions with the public. About 25% of the nation's police agencies were using them from a growing recognition that the United States has a real problem with police violence. In 2011, police killed 404 in the United States, and that FBI number counted only, quote, justifiable homicides, and that was comprised of voluntarily submitted data from law enforcement agencies. On-body cameras serve as a check against the abuse of power by police officers. Historically, there was no documentary evidence of most encounters between police officers and the public. This often resulted in radically divergent accounts of incidents. Cameras have the potential to be a win-win. Next. The benefits of body cams have been proven. Where body cams have been used, police violence has drastically declined. Schlein 15. People behave differently when they know they are being watched. Officers wearing body cameras will be less aggressive and more respectful with the community. They will also be more reluctant to use force. In one such jurisdiction, Rialto, California, after the police force had worn body cameras for a full year, citizen complaints against police declined by 60%. In Nampa, Idaho, they dropped by 24%. Another important statistic from the Rialto study is the number of incidents that resulted in the use of force by an officer, which dropped by 88% after the use of body cameras. Officers who were not equipped with cameras were twice as likely to use force as officers who were. Cameras could play a role in curtailing abuses of the long-standing police practice of stopping and frisking young men. Next. Increasing the use of body cameras allows systemic issues of racism and violence within police departments to be effectively addressed. Change is possible. Armor Cost 16. The Washington Post recently asked several police experts to examine 5 dramatic videos of police shootings. Repeated criticisms was that officers ignored standard police tactics intended to diffuse conflict, control suspects, and promote their own safety. They moved in too fast and too close to armed suspects, declined to deploy non-lethal force, and failed to establish effective communication with suspects, bystanders, and other law enforcement officers. The increasing use of police body cameras could change this. There is hopeful evidence that sophisticated training can, over time, begin to correct for these kinds of unconscious racial biases. Changing the culture of an organization is hard. Law enforcement is no exception. There is also hope for police departments around the country requiring systemic change. Next. Mandatory body cameras will change police cultures, allowing better transparency, training, and cooperation between the police and communities. Marlowe 17. One aspect of police body camera oversight is their deterrent effect on officers inclined to engage in abusive or unprofessional behaviors. Other potential benefits of body cameras offer increased trust between police departments and communities. Surveillance changes people's behaviors. When it comes to police officers who have been given the authority to use brutal, sometimes deadly force, such monitoring improves their behavior. Next. Body cameras work by tapping into the psychological principles of deterrence and self-awareness. Braga 17. 2 theoretical perspectives, deterrence and self-awareness, are commonly applied to support the position that placing body-worn cameras on officers will improve the civility of police-citizen interactions by deterring undesirable behaviors. The presence of a camera during encounters increases the likelihood that any misconduct and illegal behaviors will be captured on video. Self-awareness theory states that when we focus attention on ourselves, we evaluate and compare our current behavior to our internal standards and values. When humans are under observation, they modify their behavior, exhibit more socially acceptable behavior, adhere to social norms, and cooperate more fully with the rules. And that's the end of my speech.
All right, thank you, Diego. So we'll have our first cross-examination. You'll be cross-examined by the second negative speaker, Willie. Willie, are you ready?
Yes.
All right, you all have the floor.
Okay, so my first question is, how many police departments or municipalities exist in America writ large?
Can you repeat the question? You kind of cut off at the second part.
All right, how many police departments or municipalities exist writ large in America?
How many police departments exist writ large?
Yeah.
I believe there's around 9 precincts or 7. Not too sure about how many police departments. Why is that question important?
Because my question then becomes is, how is this plan actually funded?
The plan would most likely be funded through the government.
Through the federal government. So the federal government will pay for each police department and municipality to have this program.
Well, it's not like the money isn't anywhere. It could easily be funded by reallocating the police budget.
I agree. My next question is, how do we actually enforce this program? So for smaller police departments who don't have as much claims against the police department, why would they have to pay for police cameras if there are other preceding needs that the department needs, if they don't have many complaints?
They're not necessarily paying for the body cameras if we're just reallocating the budget. Like a lot of the budget just goes to like military equipment. We could easily just reallocate it to fund police body cameras. And another thing is that body cameras already exist. It's just an issue of enforcing that they're worn.
How much did that cost per department?
Body cameras?
Yeah.
We're not entirely sure.
Data access, control of data, storage of data.
I mean, I don't have an exact number to give you, but I doubt that the federal government can't afford it.
So in 2015, Obama tried to lay out a program similar to this by providing millions of dollars for funding police departments. Why hasn't that changed the culture of police violence?
Well, I think that's the problem. Like, it's only millions of dollars, and I'm not sure which program you're alluding to.
I haven't given an exact number, so I wouldn't know where to begin or where to end.
Yeah, so I think we can just go based off the premise that we do have the funding for cameras, and such an adequate amount of funding would probably reduce police force.
All right. My next question is, how do we hold police accountable if the public does not have control over the police cameras?
Well, another check against uses of police force could also be video footage from other sources, such as surveillance footage from cities and also people. We think that adding body cameras is also an effective.
You know who Ramsey Orta is?
Sorry?
Ramsey Orta.
Ramsey Orta? No.
He's the person who recorded Eric Garner's murder by police officers. Do you know he just got out of prison? For recording?
For recording?
Yes.
Well, no, I didn't know that.
Okay, my last question then becomes, if the police had body cameras, would Breonna Taylor still be alive?
I think Breonna Taylor's murder was more of an issue of broken windows policing. And I think that if anything, body cameras would bring the issue more to light.
Would cameras have changed that?
Would cameras have changed Breonna Taylor's murder? I think the question is whether or not body cameras can offer an effective deterrent of holding police accountable. Not a question of whether, yeah.
Thank y'all, that's time. All right, so we're gonna have 2 minutes of prep time for the first negative speaker before Evie graces us with the 1NC. So 2 minutes of prep time starting now. Maya and Carlos, give me some of your preliminary thoughts about this discussion about funding for cameras being like the barrier to body-worn cameras, you know, being more effective.
What do you mean?
So like one of the big controversies across X just now was Diego says that the issue was that there's no enforcement and there's not enough funding. And Willie is contesting that claim that that is not what stops body-worn cameras. Do you think that the funding barrier is, you know, big enough now to prevent body-worn cameras from being effective?
I mean, I think it could be, but I think that the biggest issue that was in that crossings that I noticed isn't necessarily the cost, even though that was an issue, is they would have been effective at actually curtailing violence, or whether or not that's even the objective that we're striving for in the first place. You know, I'd have been interested in seeing the affirmative say that body cameras aren't necessarily meant to stop violence on a one-for-one, but more so address some more systemic issues with accountability. But generally, I think that the debate is going in a good place.
Okay. All right.
So I agree with what Carlos just said. I think that it's interesting to hear the economic debate get brought up as far as can we fund it? And I think a lot of us have personal views as far as anything should be funded when it comes to trying to save Black and brown lives. And I think that the biggest thing that the AF is bringing up is that they understand that this is just an inch in what needs to be done towards systematic changes happening. So I like the fact that they come out with that, saying that we understand that this isn't going to curtail all, but this is somewhere in the step of the right direction. So when the argument gets brought up of cost, it's like I feel like as a commenter, just off of the 1AC, we have to say, okay, well, what is the cost of saying anything is better than nothing towards systemic change in a corrupt policing?
Yeah, completely. All right, well, we got some takes on the 1AC. Now it's time for the 1NC to give us the negative arguments. Our first negative speaker is Evilise. Evie, are you ready?
I'm ready. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we hear you loud and clear.
Awesome.
All right, you have the floor.
Stop. We're doing it again. In 2001, there was massive funding efforts for dash cameras, which is dashboard cameras in police cars, to help increase accountability and assist in matters where officers were accused of racial profiling. 19 years later, here we go again with body cameras. We need real solutions, not Band-Aid ones. This comes directly from the Bureau of Justice Assistance, a department of the Department of Justice, and this was written in 2001. The Office Community-Oriented Police Services, COPS, has provided over $21 million in grants to help state police and highway patrol agencies purchase over 5,000 cameras. Cops believe that the use of in-car cameras would possibly deter assaults while providing a safer work environment. Other emerging issues were racial profiling in policing. Based on these two critical police issues, 47 state police and highway patrol agencies quickly took advantage of the camera grants. This was back in 2001, like I said, and here we go again. Same issues, same targets, same proposed solutions. B, another issue is that there's absolutely no accountability with body-worn cameras. Body-worn cameras terminally suffer from a police perspective confirmation bias. Only the police have the power over the footage. This is Westman in 2020. Body cameras show a scene from a perspective of the officer, and the image on the screen is focused on the suspect. This changes the way the incident is interpreted. People are more likely to think the officer was justified when they view the body cam video, and less likely to think so when they view surveillance footage, which shows both actors equally. Even if there is footage, it may never be released, or it may be edited before the public even gets to see it. With only body cameras, only one side gets the power over what gets recorded and gets shown. Next, even when the government tries to compel police departments to release the footage, they don't. We still don't have the body-worn camera footage for George Floyd. Think about that. This is one of the many cases. This is Stanley in 2020, one of their sources. When police have discretion to release the videos that they want, departments often end up releasing the ones that make them look good while withholding the ones that don't. Transforming body cameras from an accountability tool into a propaganda tool. Police are refusing to release body cam footage of recent protests, citing the excuse of ongoing investigation, which, while we explained, is in no way justifies withholding the footage. In Minnesota, incredibly, footage from the body cameras worn by officers that killed George Floyd and officers who were with him have still not been made public. Next. Body-worn cameras have become a powerful tool of police departments manufacturing and distorting evidence to justify police brutality. This is Jones, 2017. Body-worn footage makes its way into the courtroom information in an officer's testimony or learning that the police department's response to an incident could bias jurors' interpretation of body-worn footage. We acknowledge that the majority of cases involve negotiations between prosecutors and defense attorneys during plea bargaining. In fact, reviews of cost-benefit analysis of implementing body-worn cameras posits that body-worn camera footage will increase the number of cases settled through guilty pleas. In direct contrast, civil liberty groups argue that such policies obstruct truth-seeking processes and give officers the opportunity to justify illegitimate action. So when the affirmative says that they're in line with grassroots movements, that's incorrect. They're actually not calling for this anymore. It doesn't work. Next, along with other forms of technological misuse and compliance issues that come with the use of body cameras, storage issues are a huge reality. There's not enough storage for all the footage to be captured daily, nor a real way to organize that amount of footage. Footage is therefore deleted at the discretion of the officers. Most footage is stored in-house with in-house servers or third-party cloud servers that are easily manipulated and accessible. This is again directly from the United States Department of Justice in 2014, which states literally, among the 40 departments that PERF consulted, all stored body-worn camera footage on in-house servers. Next. Cost. This is Ness in 2020. In many places, the cost of body cameras remains the primary concern. You can't mandate something that's going to be the breaking point of a budget. 80% of the larger departments with 500 or more full-time officers had body cameras in 2016. Only 31% of small police departments and part-time officers did. Police agencies did not have the cameras, and the primary reasons were given that the costs, including video storage, disposal hardware costs, and ongoing maintenance, is just way too much. Finally, deeper problems. The affirmative distracts from where change actually needs to occur. New policies like body cameras won't stop police violence, since they are the result of a racist and violent culture that the affirmative established themselves with their first three pieces of evidence. This is our Lopes in 17. Video can only do but so much. There are simply bigger systemic problems facing police than whether there's enough evidence to convict them in the courtroom or hold them accountable in the public eye. The legal standard for use of force is so broad that it's going to be very difficult to convict these police officers, even with solid evidence, which is something we've seen time and time again. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Evie. All right, we have our second cross-ex. So you'll be cross-exed by the 1A, Diego. Diego, are you ready?
Yeah, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we hear you. All right, y'all have the floor.
All right, cool. So I want to talk about the first piece of evidence. Why are dash cams the same thing as body cameras? If dash cams are more stationary and can't track where police officers go?
Well, actually, dash cams are typically better. Oftentimes, for one, body cameras are really limited in the scope of view, like you said. So they only capture the aggressive point of view of me standing in front of whoever I'm stopping. So one, that's already a biased point of view and it's too small. Dash cams provide a broader view where I can actually see both parties equally and can therefore create my own opinion about what's actually going on in the scene.
But even then, like you also said that dash cams didn't work, but I want to explain why they didn't work.
Yeah,
Your
that's another story.
Your card says that there was only $21 million in funding for dash cams, and that was in 2001, where only 5,000 cameras were dispersed. Why is that the same as the AF? Where in a world of the AF, we would give an adequate amount to every police department.
Well, one, you actually never provide a way or a means to do this. And I know in theory, we'd like to say all of this is great and will actually solve problems. But in the real world, we actually have to think about the details and where the funding is actually coming from. So $21 million for 5,000 cameras that only covers 5,000 officers, where one district alone can hold 5,000 officers. That's literally not talking about the scope of the entire country, which I'll get into my next speech. Okay. Means we cannot afford it, actually. So it's not just 21 million. It's just 21 million for only 5,000 officers, which can only be covered in one district.
Funding for budget concerns. Actually, let's talk about storage. You had two concerns. The first one was hacking. How many incidents of hacking occurred? Third, I'm asking this because your evidence has 0 cases, and it's more so just speculation on what could happen.
Our biggest issue wasn't hacking. One of our biggest issues was storage and actual organization of the data and whether or not these pieces of the footage that they actually need will be retained and released.
Right, but
we didn't necessarily mention
enough funding to put in, if we have enough funding to put in storage concerns, why is this still a concern?
So even if we have enough funding, one, the footage never gets released, right? George Floyd's footage was never released to this day, so we still don't have it, so it still doesn't matter. So we're spending millions of imaginary dollars.
Over the footage being released, but actually, let's move on. The second piece of evidence you had about no accountability. You conveniently didn't highlight the part where the reason there's no accountability is because, quote, police forget to turn on their body cameras in a convenient sense. Why does this card apply in a world where the app would enforce body cameras to be worn at all times? It seems your evidence
currently
is
it's enforced to be worn. At the end of the day, they should be wearing them.
Require body cameras.
Okay, but at the end of the day, it is very simple to claim that the technology malfunctioned. It's really convenient to have your arm in front of it. There's just way too many ways to manipulate the situation to justify such a huge cost when we can actually be educating these officers and getting to the root cause of the problem, which you also mentioned.
How do we educate
them?
them?
I'm not sure, but it's definitely not by spending millions of dollars in time and energy and hours and focus on cameras, which is not going to work because this is a second launch with different technology. So we're virtually just giving them better tools to mess with us.
Thank you. All right. Ooh, it's hot. Okay. All right. We're going to have some prep time for our second affirmative speaker. And then Santa Lucia is going to answer some arguments for us. All right. So Maya and Carlos, it's starting to get kind of spicy in here. I have a question. One of the issues they asked is the issue with the body cameras, is it that police officers don't turn the cameras on and that's the issue? Or is the issue with accountability something else other than that?
Yeah,
I was gonna say, so I got a little bit of experience. I served on the Oakland Police Commission Review Board before it was dismantled by Measure LL, which is another Oakland police oversight thing. Okay. I think there's multiple ways at approaching policing, and I think that there's a good argument or ideology argument being made about, is it worth doing anything? Is this the same repeat of a kind of effort? And a bigger question is being asked. We're hearing that there really isn't any policies as far as who gets the video and how soon. And I think that's something that we need to question. As somebody that's honestly served on this commission that is real, you need to understand those rules have to be made or else they're not followed. Do you hear me? Like we can have as many commissions as we want to, but if they're not all agreed upon as our society and enforced, where's it going? So I think there's a lot of good debates being made so far to hear these arguments.
Sure. Yeah, Carlos, swinging it to you. Do you think that a federal government oversight policy like the affirmative is something that would kind of reach to what Maya is looking for?
I mean, it certainly could have the potential to do something. But what I was going to say is actually that I think the focus of the debate was, at least on the negative, two parts. So first, I think it was, like you said, about accountability and, who has access to the footage, where it's stored, etc. Then the whole second layer that I think is pretty interesting is this idea that even if we were to get access to the body camera footage, that footage could easily just be turned into propaganda, right? Where even when you look at the George Floyd protests, a lot of what drew attention was people's eyes on the officers, which you don't get through body cameras. So I think that's probably one of the places where most of the tension is going to come up with between the AF and the neg, because I think they both agree that stuff has to be done. It's just more so, do body cameras help us get there, or is that money better spent doing something else?
Right. Yeah. Powerful line from the 1NC, transforming body-worn cameras from an accountability tool to a propaganda tool. Very powerful line. All right, let's see where this debate goes. This is good. Santa Lucia, are you ready for the second affirmative speech? Oh, no. You don't got no more time.
Right? I am so ready. I am ready for this.
Okay. All right. Well, the floor is yours. I'm stepping back.
Cool. So I'm going to be, I just want to give you all a little roadmap, which is just going to be, kind of a description of what I'm going to be speaking about and kind of what order. So we're specifically going to be talking about the case. First, we're going to talk about the harms of like police accountability. And then we're going to go into solvency about how body cams solve for police brutality. Awesome. Wait, let me put my timer on so that I can kind of time myself as well. Okay, I'm gonna start. First, I want to start off by saying that a lot of what the negatives arguments and the cards that they bring up is a description of the status quo, right? And not really pertaining or answering back the specifics of what our affirmative is calling for. And just like the need for change, right? The need to be able to do something different. And that is better than what the status quo is currently operating in, which the negative team brings up perfect evidence of why we need change in the status quo because of the discrepancies, because of the data, because of the funding, right? And our affirmative directly addresses that change and offers solutions to taking the first steps. Yes, we're not going to solve for all of racism. We're not going to solve for all of violence, right? That has been rooted in our system, right? But can we start taking steps to be able to change that system? Yes, we can. Can we be able to have steps towards recreating new realities so that we can then take it a further step? Yes. And that is what we're currently seeing. And that's why we need to pass this affirmative. So I'm going to break down the negatives arguments. There's been three main points, and I'm going to address each one of them separately. First is that they're, claiming that it's just a Band-Aid solution to have police body cameras. But first, like I said before, this is a description of the status quo. We have seen how video footages have created change, how has people, communities to prosecute or try to even prosecute officers. We have to remember these video footages are new. And look at how far it has has brought us, right? Imagine a world in which our affirmative, where every police officer is forced to have these body cameras in order to create accountability for police officers. That is a better world to live in than what we are currently living in now. Second, even if it's a Band-Aid solution, a Band-Aid is better than it just gushing out blood, right? We need to be able to have some first steps to be able to address these solutions, right? Because a lot of the times we get stuck in inaction, but we need to be able to start changing it. And we've seen, whether it's body cams, whether it's dash cams, whether it's police, whether it's people's personal videotapes, right? We see that video footage is a make or break in these problems and ability to shine light to police brutality and holding them accountable. The second is they talk about is accountability, right? But one is that that's more reason to have video cameras, right? Is that we need to be able to have some sort of video footage to hold these officers accountable. Second is the fact that if they do manipulate the evidence, right, that is more reason for us to be shining the light on that manipulation, right? And it shows that there are real issues and discrimination if the state is willing to go as far as manipulate the evidence, right? That's not going to last for long, as we're seeing in what is happening in the world right now, that we're not going to stand for this, right? The more video footages are available, the better. And that's our Schindlin 15 evidence that talked about how, when there's suspicion, when there is ability to have video footage that helps, right, hold police and citizens accountable, we're able to better analyze what is happening, As communities of color, we already know what's happening. We just need the rest of the world to see what's happening. The last part is the cost and manipulation. And the first one, the first argument is we have money to be throwing at our military. We have money to be throwing at the fact that, we have more police and we want more police and stuff. We want more police, but we don't have funding for video footage. You should really, as a judge, think about how that argument is being used to manipulate this plan, right? If we have money to be thrown at more policing and more brutality to our communities, why don't we have money to be able to solve for these issues and have real accountability to our police officers, right? We put our money where we think it's important. And we think these police body cams are a necessary importance to be able to create accountability and create change.
Thank you. All right. We have our next cross-examination from our first negative speaker, Evie. Evie, are you ready?
Yes, I am ready.
Okay. All right, y'all have the floor.
Okay, so we all agree Black lives matter more than the cost of cameras, correct? You agree? We agree?
I mean, as an affirmative, we do agree. I don't think that the negative necessarily agrees with that.
I absolutely agree. So
evidence that says that the cost of this is way too much, right?
Okay. So how about false hope and false solutions? Do you think we've had enough false solutions? Do you think as the Black community, have we had enough false hope? Yes or no?
Have we had enough false hope in the system?
Yes. Have we had enough Band-Aid solutions thrown at us?
My argument and the evidence will speak to that is that a solution is better.
You say we have money. You say we have money for the cameras, and a solution is better than absolutely no solution. But I think that people would prefer a solution that actually works. And I think as of right now, you have not proved. Can you show us one piece of solvency evidence that actually shows that your plan solves?
Yeah,
something that actually says body cameras solve.
Yeah, our Schindlin 15 evidence specifically talks about how we need to be able to have police body cameras to be able to start investigating the police brutality, to start investigating and putting to.
Okay, one question. How do you know that something's been manipulated if you've never seen the original?
How do I know something is manipulated? I mean,
yes, if you've never seen the original.
Like if somebody has a different story than another person, right, that's going to come out in court. Truth always comes out no matter
So
what.
you're saying every single court case has resulted in the correct verdict is what you're saying, because the truth always comes out in the court.
I would say that the truth is starting to start coming out.
Because of bystander footage, not any dash cams or any body worn cameras currently worn in the system. But later they'll work though, right?
I mean, the fact that there is video footage, and if we win, that video footage is our make or break in how we are prosecuting and holding accountable police officers, whether it's personal, whether it's dash.
But as of right now, we're just proving that they do have the ability to manipulate.
There's the fact that we have video footage that is going to be important.
So the fact that we have it, even though it's manipulated, even though we're not going to actually see what really happened, even though some of it's going to get lost in translation, it's still okay to spend millions of dollars on something that's getting us no results. Yes?
That's your argument. That's not our argument. Our argument is that video camera footage is a make or break in how.
How? Can you explain how it was a make or break in George Floyd? How police footage was a make or break, not bystander footage. Police footage was make or break. In George Floyd's case,
there was a video footage
that was never released.
Excited the country to be able to take action. Not even this country, the whole world. That the fact that there is a video footage to be able to showcase what is happening with police brutality.
So bystander footage solves your case, is what you're saying. So the status quo solves.
Video footage, yes, solves 100%.
So we solve. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thank you.
Oh my God.
All right, we're gonna have mandatory prep time for the second negative speaker. So Willie, you have 2 minutes of CX, or 2 minutes of prep time. Sorry. So commentary. Question: what is a better option, or which one is better? Bystander footage, body worn cameras?
I mean,
to be honest. We're doing it again. Go, Carlos. Yeah,
go ahead. You can go ahead.
No, go. Because we're going to swap off.
Okay, no, I was going to say, I do think bystander footage, is, at least in terms of what's happened in the past, has been more effective. But that doesn't necessarily mean that body cam footage can't be effective. It's more so we need to figure out how it could be effective, as well as deal with the problems that would be associated with, the perspective of the police officer and the managing of the footage. But I think the thing that they both agree on is that people need to see what's going on.
That's right. Maya?
I agree. It's the biggest argument that I'm hearing is maybe we need to do a combination of some sort, or maybe it's both. It's best to have both bystander, third person footage and the actual body cam footage to still hold police officers accountable. Because I do think of the situations where we're not going to be in rural, I can't even say the word, RURAL, rural America, and not have those interactions on those screens like we do in urban areas where we have those third and fourth party cameras and the hyper surveillance areas. Those don't really exist in areas where Black people can really be more vulnerable, and we're seeing these cases explode, and there's only bystander footage, maybe one off. But I think just doing a combo maybe, would be a better way. But then we live in a hyper surveillance nation. So I think that's the exchange where I don't know. Are we willing to exchange that?
Here's a quick follow-up question that we got real quick. If the question is, or if the option, the best option is a combination of both bystander footage and body worn cameras, is there a good argument to spend more money on body worn cameras? If like the option is we need a good third party option and a good body worn cameras, and there are body worn cameras, it's an argument good to spend more money on better or improving body worn cameras.
Police department should be defunded to and have a little bit of money put into that, of course, along with the other services we're demanding. But I also think the federal government should step up. But look at our admin. But hypothetically, in this world of debate, the federal government should step up and fund such things that the community, as well as other things that we're asking for, because it's not just a one take all kind of thing. I want us to kind of think about that. Like, it's not going to take one just solution, but it's also not like we should just ask for one thing. There's a whole list of things we got to get through.
Right. All right. Carlos.
Yeah, I think for me, the thing she said something that was really interesting is this whole defund the police thing. Mostly because I'm not sure how that would then be resolved in this debate, right? Mostly because if the point is to defund the police because they have too much money in the departments, but then that money turns into technology, I'm not sure if that's necessarily what people want, as opposed to, you know, maybe investing in other programs that aren't necessarily funding or a way to fund the police.
I was gonna say when I say defund, I think there's like two spectrums and columns that we say when we see defund, and I'm talking about the stance of defund and put into other programs, not the stance of just completely abolish the police.
Right. So you like reality, like defunding.
Right. I'm sorry if I'm not wording that right.
No, you good. That's good that we set up the dialogue, the differences in the plans, and you explain.
Right, because there is a big debate going on right now, and I think sometimes the wordage gets mixed up in the signal. So thank you for clarifying. That's exactly what I mean. You're right.
So, well, thank you for that. All right. Time for our second negative speaker, Mr. Willie Johnson. Willie, you ready?
Yeah, I'm good. Hello.
All right.
So before I start, I'm going to address the 1AC, do a quick line by line, which is I'm going to try to respond to each argument that was made. Secondly, I will move on to some of the negative arguments and just overall concept. My partner and I will be splitting the block. So certain arguments that I won't get to, Evie will get to. That is the best way for the negative to produce as much effective offense as possible. All right. Are we good? All right. I would like to start off by suggesting that the 1AC has a burden here. A burden to prove that their policy will be effective, that it can be implemented clearly, it can be enforced in all territories, particularly smaller departments, and that we have a way to officially fund it without bankrupting state governments, without bankrupting the federal government, or without trading off from important programs like education or healthcare. We'll first start off by talking about the 1AC. There's not much extended in the 1AC, so there's no real solvency mechanism that they go for or any harms that they actually justify. They've made no extensions of any of their pieces of evidence, which proves that the 1AC may not be as strong as they think it is. Here's a couple of arguments to some of their cases. First of all, let's talk about their people's evidence. Their people evidence talks about the racial biases that exist in the police. There's nothing that can be done unless we train police to be less racially biased. This unconscious action is what leads to people like planting drugs and stuff. That doesn't mean that the camera will catch everything. I can turn to a dark spot and plant evidence in order to get a suspect arrested or, in the worst case, killed. This is proved by Eric Garner. Eric Garner was chokehold because he had cigarettes. We don't know what the agenda or what the situation is, but the same individual who recorded his murder was arrested because they found probation on him because they arrested him for initially recording it in the first place, which means that bystanders are not protected by the law the same way the police are. Furthermore, you can extend our Department of Justice evidence that suggests that even with the data, there's nothing that can be done by the public in order to control or manipulate that, control that evidence, which means that there's no oversight other than the police, which means police are going to do what they do best, which is protect the police. That means racial biases will continue. The next argument is, the next piece of evidence that they read is their Crump evidence. There's a couple of reasons why their Edwards evidence. There's a couple of reasons why this Edwards evidence is problematic. It suggests that there is just this PTSD that exists, but the problem is, at the end of the day, whether or not the police have camera, do you fear the police coming into your neighborhood? Do you fear the police knocking down your doors? If you ask yourself this question at the end of the debate round, that means they don't solve for the racial trauma that policing and police surveillance produces in the first place. Furthermore, if you look at our Wiseman evidence, it suggests that the police manipulate it in their favor, which is problematic and also just hurts the people more. Their Crump evidence does not deal with the question of accountability. How can we truly hold police officers accountable when they can do things like this to cover up their body camera and we don't see the complete footage? There's a couple problems in here is that we are allowing the police to account for what is good or bad. This is the same system that the status quo exists. The act doesn't do anything to change or make the world effectively better. The next argument I would like to address is their Stanley evidence. This is probably problematic for them because 5 years ago, Stanley was like, police cameras work. But now in 2020, after George Floyd, we still don't have the evidence, which means that they have bigger issues than just police cameras and whether or not they've been handed out. It's a question of whether or not police as the institution is ethical. The problem here is that they are not. It's proven by multiple pieces of evidence that we read. The first evidence is obviously outstanding evidence, which suggests that police use this as a way to make the evidence favorable for them. They control and manipulate the data that they have. That means that the public has no oversight. The public can't do anything. So bystanders may be the only solution given the status quo. Furthermore, their standing evidence is problematic because it shows that police brutality continued after police cameras were used. Police cameras were used in the incident to George Floyd, and still there's no true justice that's being done. There's nothing that's stopping more police brutality from happening since that event. Next is their Armco evidence. Their Armco evidence is problematic because it says that what we really need is sophisticated training. The act doesn't call for training. They don't even train the people how to use the body cameras, which means there's a fault in the fact that their technology is, one, always going to be new, and two, they don't have control over it. Furthermore, to pay for oversight will cost millions of dollars. I would like to read a piece of evidence to just prove our arguments about cost. Smaller departments are already backing out of body cameras, citing cost as a major reason. Videos hurt civilian police relations as mostly benefits the officers and departments, reducing likelihood of civilian complaints. This is Norwood in 20. Officers in the US and UK who are wearing body cameras were 15% more likely to be assaulted, increasing police violence. Police agencies have resisted body cameras because of the cost. In 2018, the Dallas Department, for 1 year, in addition to other administrative staff costs, the annual cost is $1.1 million. Smaller police departments ended their body camera programs because of the high cost. Police want these body cameras. They work in departments they work in the department's favor and the officer's favor. Seeing the video and assessing our actions, civilians may decide not to pursue the complaints. This totally turns the affirmative. It means that body cameras the technology works to the advantage of the police officer. It doesn't give civilians more control. It doesn't give civilians some oversight. It doesn't give them control, which means that the racial bias and racial violence does not get checked because the people who are engaging in that violence are the ones who are evaluating whether or not it's considered violence in the first place. This means that Black, brown, poor immigrant neighborhoods are going to suffer more, given that body cameras only record it and allow the public to see these images. I don't want to see George Floyd again. I don't want to see another Eric Garner again.
That's time, brother. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Our second affirmative speaker, Cross-X, Santa Lucia.
Yes. Can I put my timer on before we start?
Yeah, sure.
3 minutes, right?
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Is there one solution to be able to solve for racism?
It's definitely not the ask.
But is there one solution to solve for racism?
There is no one solution to solve for anything.
So why is it that you are forcing us to solve for all of racism through our affirmative?
Your evidence suggests that this is a way to deal with racial violence, not us. Your evidence itself that you don't solve for.
Which evidence is that?
Well, it's a couple pieces of evidence. First of all, let's talk about your first piece of evidence, the people's evidence that suggested that police violence is due to racial bias. Cameras don't stop racial biases. They don't solve unconscious racism by police officers who join in order to fill power. Let's talk about your next piece of evidence. Let's talk about Let's talk about the Edwards evidence. It suggests that PTSD is something that can be resolved by cameras. How can you resolve racial tension that has been created since slavery by overseers and police violence?
Can you point out in a line that says that police cameras are going to magically solve for the racism and trauma that you are claiming?
Let's look at your Braga evidence. Your Braga evidence suggests that police cameras will do.
So nowhere in the Edwards 19 evidence does it say that police cameras will solve for racism.
It doesn't. For harms you don't solve for. Now let's talk about the Braga evidence, which is in your solvency. The Braga evidence suggests that.
So you say that that police that the bigger issue, right, is that we need to change the bystanders, right? That bystanders somehow solve. Why are bystanders the solution to the problem?
Bystander solution. The status quo already solves that.
You said what?
The status quo already solves that. Bystanders are producing a video that is actually creating change. Because the George Floyd video, not out. It was a bystander who recorded that.
I would agree that video footages is a necessary thing to be able to have accountability and awareness.
What accountability? Like I asked the question in the first cross-sex, would it stop Breonna Taylor's death? There's still no answer for that by the 1AC.
But my question is, right, does video camera, right, allow for people to be aware of the issues going on?
There's so many police brutality videos that exist, and there's still no change to police. Sean Bell.
So you're what?
Amadou Diallo. Eric Garner.
Okay, but how would we have known about these issues without video footage camera?
What would we do after we got the footage?
So you're not going to answer my question that, video footage camera allowed for the awareness of this, right?
Videos and we done nothing.
Or no?
Status quo. We have the videos. We have access to those videos. Nothing has been done. We're still
that allowed for us to be aware of these issues, right?
There's police body camera footage for Elijah McClain's death. Nothing's been done.
Thank you. All right. Every time I jump in there, it's like putting your hand in the fan. All right. We're gonna have no prep. Evilise, are you ready for the one and all? I forgot. It's the name block.
No prep. No, I wasn't. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Right. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna keep this simple. I'll start by just saying awareness is literally nothing without accountability and action. I repeat, awareness is absolutely nothing without accountability and action. The only thing we can both agree on right now is that cops are inherently racist. And unfortunately, not we're saying all cops are evil, right? We're just saying the system is producing biased actions and actors that are not actually equally enforcing the law. Being made aware of this without being able to do anything, again, does nothing. So let's go to their solvency. Their first piece of evidence is the Stanley 15 evidence. And they said, we're only using a small number of cameras. We also use a piece of Stanley evidence. So that means we use the same analyst that they did, but 5 years later. And did it ever occur to the affirmative that maybe the reason why there's such a small number of cameras being used currently is because the cost is so high, so it's not realistically feasible? So please extend our Stanley evidence that says it costs way too much to actually sustain this, and it's not a real solution, right? So now let's also extend our Westman 2020 evidence, which says that this footage is manipulated anyway. So therefore, we get no results. So we can spend money and feel like we're doing something because we got money to throw it up, but we're not actually bringing any justice about, which again, we're going to have to be traumatized again and again and again, just continuously watching footage, following trials that never reach a verdict that we needed to in a timely manner. The fact that we had such clear footage of George Floyd being killed, but the bystanders were then prosecuted before the officers is a problem. Extend our evidence that says we still don't have the George Floyd footage. Still, that's our Stanley 20. We still don't have it. That's a problem, right? Their second piece of evidence on their solvency says that there's been an 80% increase or a decrease in violence, where they never actually explained this. And two, I would just say it's really easy to manipulate statistics when you can manipulate footage. Just saying. So next, if you Google the average cost of a body camera, it ranges to $120, from $120 to $1,000, depending on the quality. Now let's assume they get the cheapest ones, right? That's $120 per camera. In New Jersey alone, according to the New Jersey State Police, there are 550 law enforcement agencies that are employing about 33,704 officers currently just in New Jersey, right? At $120 a camera, we're already at $4 million, which doesn't include any replacements, which are inevitable in that kind of an environment. At the end of the day, we can't afford it. It doesn't solve anything. It just re-entrenches us in the same issues. And then they're just going to turn around and say, oh, but we spent money on solutions already. We solved it already. We didn't. This is a problem.
Thank you. All right. We're going to have some prep time for the 1AR. So Diego, you have some prep. Okay. The block, Maya and Carlos, how do we feel about the controversy between the status quo of resolving the issue versus the need for more money for body cameras?
Are we trading off this time? What's happening?
Yes. I was waiting on you. I was being patient.
We got a system now. All right. I this time I'll just point to you. So Maya, you go first, and then I'll come to Carlos.
Okay, say the question again for me.
Question is, do you think the status quo, i.e. like bystander footage that's happening currently, is enough to resolve the problems that the affirmative is identifying, or do you think that there's a necessity for more money?
Oh, I think it's, when you say a necessity for more money, I don't know if that's just it. I think the negative is also doing a good point at still saying there's a lot of lapse in who gets what and when and how we still, what's the next step even on camera. And I personally think about also, even if it's released to mainstream or the public, the re-trauma it does to Black and brown people to continuously watch this, I don't know if that's worth the exchange right now. So I think Meg is a good argument, you know, does money exchange in that cost now of the PTSD further enhancing it?
Right. There's definitely a perspective that we don't think about. It's like, I don't want to keep watching. Like I mean, personally, I've not seen the George Floyd video. I've done everything in my power to like not see it. Like I skip over it every time someone shares it. I just know for a fact.
I stopped watching that after the man in Louisiana who was selling CDs. I couldn't take that no more. So I couldn't imagine if the people who are on the front lines who watch this trauma continuously, and then we put it into the public, our children, the normalization, bigger impact. And so I, hear something.
Yeah, for sure. Carlos, any thoughts?
Yeah, for me,
so I, hear something from that.
My bad. No, I was gonna say is for me the part that really stood out was in the 2NC when Willie says, we have to think about what this means without bankrupting or trading off with other types of programs. That for me stuck because we often talk about how schools are underfunded, how communities are underfunded, how we don't have money for affordable housing. Right. And yet, even if we were to squeeze out some money for some cameras, why wouldn't it be better spent in these communities? But right. I'm also hearing what the affirmative is saying in terms of, there's a lot of things that if you're not capturing it, it makes it even harder to hold police accountable. I right. think that this debate is really going to come down to whether or not body cameras can be effective and whether or not the affirmative can prove that the plan actually resolves the impacts or rather addresses some of the violence. Because if it just highlights it without addressing it, then I think the negative is ahead here. If the AF wins that, some type of body camera footage is better than nothing at all in instances where we wouldn't have bystander footage, then I think the situation then might change in favor of the affirmative. But right now, I think the biggest press is why spend the money on cameras when there's like a whole slew of things that we could spend our money on that addresses systemic issues.
Right. All right, cool. Thank you. Okay. Diego, 1AR, East Coast versus West Coast. Are you ready?
Yeah, it's 3 minutes, right?
Yeah, 3 minutes.
Okay, let me put a timer really quick and then I'll tell you when I'll start.
No problem. You got the floor.
I'm just getting my stuff ready. Ooh, my stand was about to fall. Hold up. There we go. All right, is everybody good?
Are you good, bro?
Yeah, it's because the stand was about to fall. I accidentally placed it in the wrong position.
All right.
All right. I'll be starting. All right, so a little roadmap. It's going to be like a little overview of what the AF is arguing, and then I'm going to bracket their arguments in the way I see it, and then, yeah. All right, so I'll be starting 3, 2, 1. Currently, there is no accountability for police to stop using violent force on innocent civilians. RF offers a first step in trying to check the systemic violence of Black and brown communities through the implementation that every state is required to have police wear body cameras. The plan solves by applying the rules of self-awareness and deterrence theory, which is that police will succumb to societal pressure once their actions are exposed. We have two instances that support this theory. First is our Schlein 15 evidence that they have not responded to at all, which cites evidence from Rialto, California and Nampa, Idaho, in which an experiment that forced police to wear body cameras and violence force was reduced drastically by 60% in each district. And if you want more recent examples, the protests for George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Robert Fuller, Tony McDade, etc., show that police either resign or the budgets are continuously reallocated to fit the demands of societal pressure, which answers all of their budget concerns. The other argument they have is that we need better alternatives than police body cameras. We're not saying that police body cameras are the only solution, but they have zero alternatives. Is that they have arguments for, such as education, or that we need to educate police. You need to force them to provide a solution before they come at us saying that we have none. At least we are proposing something, unlike them, and they can't back out of this. They can't just say, oh, we're negative, we don't have to propose anything. We're not saying that, but we also saying that you need to have something else if you're telling us that ours doesn't work at all. There's something crucial that the negative also hasn't answered. Our Braga 17 evidence about self-awareness. The 1NR can have pretty speeches about how self-awareness does nothing, but our evidence comes from a psychological perspective that when people know they are continuously being monitored, police will check themselves, or at least the majority of them. This theory is very problematic for them, for the negative, because it gives us the reason to say that when body cameras are mandated, police will at best monitor themselves more, which is backed up by our statistics from the Schlein 15 evidence. The neg is presenting you a skewed future. They're trying to make us out as if we think body cams solve everything, but body cameras and bystander footage can exist together in curtailing police violence. We have all agreed that footage matters. So even if there's concerns about how body cameras are skewed, body cameras have the potential to do nothing but help. There was one question about PTSD that was brought up in their speeches right now, but this is an ivory tower argument. We're not concerned over bystanders being horrified by videos because we're focused on the action of police brutality itself. I understand that us as people watching it is traumatizing, but this debate is not about us, which is a question you should ask yourself at the end of this debate. There's one huge concern that you should only have in your mind, which is that can body cameras actually help and increase accountability? The Schlein 15 evidence is going to play a key part in this debate. They're consistent in criticism of the Stanley 15 evidence won't get them anywhere, because even their own evidence that they re-highlighted, or their new author, also says that the reason police distortion occurs is because they turn off their cameras and not anything else. Their pieces of evidence can argue that there's no accountability at all, because that's just descriptive of the status quo, which is not us at all. This means that any world that mandates cameras to be turned on is a world that's better than now, which means you can already vote out for a better future. The biggest concern they have on this issue is manipulation. And while we can't confirm that manipulation is gone in our world, we can agree that a world where there is required cameras is most likely better than a world where only Nevada and North Carolina require it, which means a risk of the app solving is a reason to vote for the app.
All right. Thank you, Diego. Go on AR. All right. We need some prep for the 2NR. So, Willie, you have some prep time for your last rebuttal. Okay. Maya, let's do Carlos first this time, and then Maya. Maybe this is a good, what argument in the 1AR, or how do you feel about the 1AR? Let's just say that. How do you feel about the 1AR?
I thought the 1AR was good. The negative I felt like was ahead after the block, but I feel like the 1AR is giving some spice. So I think it's going to be a little bit closer than it looked in like the second half of the debate when the block was kind of hot.
Okay.
I do think that the 1AR sets up the affirmative to go for like the key arguments in terms of, accountability and dealing with problems that don't necessarily affect like viewers, but more so the people that are affected by police violence. But I do think there's some doors open where the negative could run straight through and make this debate really difficult for them in the last two speeches.
Okay. Maya.
Couldn't come off mute.
Oh, you all right? Okay. Turn the camera on. All right. How we feel?
At the end.
How we feel about the 1AR?
I think that the 1AR did a really good job of bringing it back to what they wanted the judges to focus on for the round. I think it did a way better explanation than, debates can get emotional. So I think that the 1AR did a great job at summarizing what's important right now for us to, as judges and observing the debate. What do we want to see as judges? What is our vote going to count for?
Right. Okay. Okay. We got 20 seconds left. Last couple rebuttals. Is there an argument that you wish that this debate will come down to? Give me one argument. Maya, give me one argument that you wish this debate comes down to.
You gonna have us jinx them.
I mean, okay, fine.
I honestly am staying open to it. I think all of us come into this topic with our own emotions, charged up from what's going on around us in our own little sectors. We in East Oakland. So, it's a lot of feelings you can have in this. So I'm optimistic that we're starting this discussion now of what is going to be the best. Like I said, we got a whole line of stuff we want to see get done. This ain't the end.
For sure. Carlos, anything that you want to be in this debate by the end?
So I won't necessarily point out a specific argument, but I do really, really want to see comparison in the last two speeches. So I think everybody's been throwing out a whole bunch of great arguments, and I need them to break it down and to synthesize for me.
Sorry. Yeah, clarity. Yeah. Sounds like a great suggestion, Carlos. All right. Willie, are you ready for the 2NR?
I'm good.
I bet. All right. Whenever you're ready.
I would like to extend the first point that my partner made, which is that awareness without accountability, without justice, without some way to hold the people who control the data and information accountable for the violence that they've created produces nothing. We can see all these images. We can have access to all these images, but it won't stop people from dying. Police know they're being recorded. Police are stopping people from recording. Police are manipulating, according to our Wiseman evidence, they're manipulating the evidence so that it works in their favor. Furthermore, we read a piece of evidence in the 2NC that is not addressed, which suggests that not only do police manipulate it in order for citizens not to complain, but departments in Dallas, smaller departments, have tried to use body cameras and because of cost have eliminated the project overall, which means that without any accountability or enforcement measure, it means that the act will fail. It will fall on its face. It will be another policy failure. And that is not a good idea. That is not something we should support, something that we know will fail in the future. All right, let's get into it. I've asked a couple of questions about what does body cameras actually do in terms of how do we actually enforce it. In the case of Elijah McClain, with the Aurora Police Department in Colorado, the footage we have access to, but there's still been no justice to bring forth the murderers of Elijah McClain, which means that the violence can still happen. We can have access to the footage can be shown, but it does nothing to ensure to protect brown, black, poor immigrant communities. He made an argument very clearly in the 1AR that it's not about us, but it is about us. It is about how we reproduce a better relationship with the police and civilians. How do we work together in order to ensure our communities are protected? I come from New York City where children are being shot in public. We need some way to reform the police. We need to build better relationships between civilians and police. That's also what our Norwood evidence suggests too, is that police reform needs to happen. The status quo is already working towards that, which means that they said we have an alternative, but we believe that the work that is already being done is probably a better alternative than having this Band-Aid solution that just covers the problem but doesn't heal the actual wounds, the racial bias that they talk about, the PTSD and the trauma that is created. I don't want to see a George Floyd again. I don't want to see these images. And furthermore, I don't want to see the injustices that continue to happen because we can't bring forth the murderers of Breonna Taylor. I think this is an important thing to ask yourself at the end of the day, is has the affirmative met their burden? There are three things fundamentally we have asked the affirmative to prove. One, how is this plan going to be implemented when in past examples they have failed? Two, how do we actually enforce it when there are smaller departments in places like Dallas who can't truly enforce it because of cost? And three, how do we afford to equip nearly 18,000 police municipalities with cameras? There are a couple of things that they have talked about that we can answer and address really quickly. First is their argument about accountability. They don't resolve the issues that create the violence in the first place that makes us want to hold the police accountable, which means there's only a risk that the affirmative is a bad idea, and you can easily vote negative because the AF does not meet its burden.
Thank you, Willie. All right. Now we have some prep time for our final rebuttal. So Santa Lucia, you're on the clock for prep time. All right, Maya first this time. How do you feel about the negative's final rebuttal?
I think that they just did a great job of bringing home why Neg really deserves, and again, I'm not voting, just in case. I don't want no tough feelings. But no, I think Neg does a great point of bringing her home of like one, do they really solve for what they're saying they're putting out there? Is it worth putting this type of money, funding, in an investment in time, energy, and saying this is a solution if it's really not going to get the job done how we're saying it is? Even if it's a small impact, is that impact worth the exchange of still no justice as far as justice in this policing system, holding police accountable, and changing the systematic mindset of how they're trained in the first place that lead up to these deaths? Because nobody is claiming that they're going to be able to stop Black and brown death. And that's the thing. Like, how many videos and oil does it take to stop Black and brown people being killed?
Right. Carlos, how you feel?
I thought the speech was powerful. It was comparative. I wish it was, a little bit more focused around the weighing, or rather like isolating what their best pieces of offense is. But I do think Willie did a good job of highlighting, where the affirmative is going to go and then trying to answer it before they go there. A big lingering question that I have is still, how will body cam footage help? Right. So the negative spends a lot of time explaining why it's going to cost a lot of money, but then they spend the second half of that explaining, even if we were to be able to afford it, would it be effective? And I think that Willie asked a really important question, and rather put the onus on the affirmative to meet its burden, where it's not about, trying whatever we can because there's a finite amount of resources, but more so knowing that there's a finite amount of resources, will this particular action be effective? And I think that's the question that the affirmative is going to have to answer in order to come out on top.
Right. Good. All right, we timed that perfectly. Santa Lucia, are you ready for our final rebuttal in the East Coast versus West Coast alumni debate series? Yeah. Okay. All right. She lit. You got to unmute yourself.
I am ready.
All right. You got it. The floor is yours.
Get the last word in the debate. I like having the last word.
Let's do it.
Awesome. So, to give you kind of a brief overview of what we're going to talk about, I'm going to, speak primarily on the case. I'm going to do a little bit of overview and framing for you, and then just get on to the issues in the debate round. Let me put my timer on before we start. Awesome. So this debate comes down to whether or not the affirmative in creating and mandating police cameras, whether or not that will a good first step in producing change. And we say it does, right? For the reasons of the harms, right? Police brutality leads to very devastating effects to our communities. Not only do they steal the lives of innocent lives at a young age, but they also increase violence and terror in communities, increasing depression that leads to a lot of more mental health issues, and also to mention that it's genocide against people of color, right? Having police accountability, having police body cameras allows for more accountability that will help with police brutality. I'm not saying that's the only solution, but it's a help, right? My partner specifically talks about how the Schneider evidence, police body camera presence decreases police brutality by 60% in one precinct, right? Imagine for the rest of the country. And the probability of this happening, we see it all happening all the time. As people of color, we don't need to go to the news to see these issues. We can see them in our front doors, right? And we need to be able to have a solution that is in the right direction. And the time frame for this is it's happening now. Police brutality is happening now. Violence against our community is happening now. We need to have solutions to these issues to be able to address them. And we see it bubbling up in the years of police brutality happening. And we need real change. So this debate really comes down to certain issues that I want to address. The first is accountability, right? And we need both. We need to be able to have accountability. And the fact that we're even having this discussion on whether or not police body cameras are a necessary thing points out that we need body camera footage, right? The fact that we're even able to have these conversations, right, about the solutions of the problem is a reason why we need to start moving into the right direction. And video camera footage is the necessary solution to be able to start that, because it awakens our minds, it awakens people's responses, and it shows the real issues that are happening with police brutality. I mean, whether or not it's video camera footage, whether it was personal footage, the fact that the negative agrees that video footage is what allows us to be able to talk about these issues is what's important. The next is that they're talking about money, about, not having enough money, but reallocating our money solves for that. We'll be able to reallocate the money to be able to solve for these solutions. It's not necessarily like we don't have any money at all. We have the money. It's about knowing where to put the money at.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much for everybody. Clap, 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 clap. We're going to give the judges like a minute or two just to get your thoughts together. And I'm going to shoot it to Chaz first because Chaz has to go. So Chaz, you're going to go first. Just like take a minute to get your thoughts together. And we'll go from there.
That was awesome.
Yeah, I thought that was great.
Last two speeches I thought were especially good. Makes it a very close decision, and I'm glad I don't have to make the decision.
Right? That's a good question. Are people going to make a decision? Secretly. You should make a secret decision. So, like, if you're a judge, secretly message me who you voted for. We won't announce it, but like for the giggles amongst organizations, so just keep it internal.
With the messages.
See, that's that data manipulation I'm talking about. No, I'm just playing.
Okay. Okay. The betrayal. Whew.
What do you think about it, Devon? We haven't heard your thoughts. You over here have just been gassing everything.
My thoughts? I was gassing everything. I think the debate was great. I really enjoyed the questions or the debate about whether or not which form of surveillance is preferable. Is it video surveillance from like body cam footage, or is the status quo enough to resolve the necessity for footage? One of the areas that I wish was in the latter speech, like in the last negative speech, that was kind of like big for me at least, was this argument about the recirculation of videos and basically like downplaying it was in the speech, but I think it was a bit better in the 2NC Willie arguments, particularly like there's one thing that, for example, in the comments right now, Ryan pointed out one line that Willie had that I also was like, oof, which is like, I think Willie said, the same ones committing the violence are the ones that are determining whether or not it's violent in the first place. And I just think a lot of that language and packaging was really impactful for me. I also think a lot of the framing of the affirmative was just really, really smart and strategic to be like, yeah, this may not be like the thing, but we need things. Like, there's no question that we need to move in the right direction. But yeah, preliminary thoughts. I'm gonna cut my thoughts in half because we kind of gotta go. Chaz, are you ready for your preliminary decision / like comments? All right, come on.
Yeah.
Nice to us, Chaz.
First, hello.
Yeah, we hear you. You good?
Yeah, so first I want to thank all the debaters for a good debate. I thoroughly enjoyed it. So I'm not gonna announce the decision. Like I said, I'll message it. But I have some thoughts about the debate, and those thoughts start with the 1ER, which so I'll give a special kudos to the 1ER because I thought the 1ER was a pretty good speech. An important argument coming out of the 1ER, which heavily influenced my decision, was the statistics that the 1ER gives about how violence is reduced by 60% in two districts. I think that is a good argument, and I would have liked to see that argument leveraged by the 2AR more. So when we talked about more comparison, I think that the 2AR could use that line to do more comparison. And I think that there's two lines that I'll give kudos to from the 2NR that I think that the from the 2NR that the 2AR should do some comparison towards. And I think it's that one about how to get this equipment to smaller districts, right? So your argument, your best piece of offense was the 60% percentage in the districts that did have it, right? But I'm not sure how that responds to or what or how that grapples with the negatives argument about how small districts can't carry out this plan literally. And then the second thing is that the 1ER makes the argument that majority of the police will police themselves, and I think that the negative has pretty good offense against that in terms of saying that well, if it is about policing themselves, then that does not really break the barrier between civilians, or i.e. us, versus the police department. So I thought that those were just some good takeaways that I think we all should sit with longer to resolve.
Thank you, Chaz.
Thank you so much, Chaz. I know you got to go, so whenever you decide to.
I don't.
Oh,
class is canceled, so no worries.
Oh, all right, party night. Who'd like to go next? Mateo, Joseph, either one of you.
You go ahead. Go for Mateo.
So Mateo.
Okay. I really liked how the app was pushing that, like, this is a really great step that we need to take. How we should really start on saying that we need body cameras to help address the problem. If we don't do anything, then we're not really solving for anything. One thing that they can like improve on, I think, is more or less saying like how like defending how the neg is poking holes, because they are poking a bunch of holes and they don't really I don't feel like they really extend them well enough. So if they just had a little more like not structure, but had a little more phrasing that like said, hey, we should be really focused on how they can actually rebalance their budgets like many other places, like how the government balances their budget for things all the time, how they can really do that. And taking the focus off of that and pushing it to like, yo, they can actually do these things. We need to focus like not on these small little problems, the bigger picture. And then on the neg, I really liked how they were bringing up all these like bigger picture issues. Like, yeah, like what if they do manipulate it? We don't know how that could affect how someone gets prosecuted. What if they can't afford this? Then how are we supposed to address the problems in other places? Like, it's not just that there's a thing happening, it's that there's multiple things that factor into this. And then what I feel like they can improve on is really driving in that, like, it might be a first step, but didn't we already have that first step? Like, That first step happened when we got cameras in cars. That first step happened when civilians were out taking videos. I feel like if they were saying more of that, then it's like, it would have really drove home, like, we already have this happening. We already have video, and it hasn't helped many people.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Joseph.
Cool. Well, first of all, I want to say thank you to everybody for hosting this event. It's super awesome. And I know while having to be at home all the time could suck, it's sort of opened up possibilities for things like this that I never would have imagined we did at our camp. So thank you to Newark for inviting us to your event. Shout out to Bottle and Foodle. It's been super awesome working with you all at camp. So I'll just get into the debate part. Something I agree with everything that the other judges have said. So I'll just speak briefly on something separate. But I really appreciated the sort of diversity in terms of style, right? And the ways that we're articulating these points. Because for me, at least, I think that when we take these ideas and we take these discussions into the world at large and into the community, right, that the way that we tell people about these policies or the resistance against these policies, right, sort of changing how we display that message is really powerful. I thought it was really great how the 1AR sort of leans on these statistics, right, uses that pathos side of it and these specific instances. And inversely, I think the negatives ethos was extremely powerful, right? This quote of awareness without accountability, without justice produces nothing, right? You started it early in the debate and kept it going, right? You planted that seed in the judge's mind. So that was really helpful. So I think that sort of stylistic differences and sort of approach was important from all sides. In terms of places that I think that could be continued, right? I think that for the affirmative, in the way that the negative was very powerful and being able to point to specific names, specific instances of scenarios where we have the footage and people and police were not held accountable. I know there might be scenarios where those police were held accountable, right? What happened in those scenarios, or when did it prevent it, right? Are there those examples? In this debate, I'm not really sure, right? And the neg gets pretty far ahead on that front. Inversely, similar to what Chas highlighted, I think that the statistics of those two particular examples of 60% is a huge number in a reduction of violence. I think a number or some sort of measurement or stat from the neg would be helpful to pair along with these examples that you give there. But on both sides, I think this was a great debate, and I just look forward to a longer season, being able to engage these topics with our students. And I know this debate only scratches the surface of what all of these things are going to get into.
All right, thank you so much, Joseph. That was great. All right, so thank you, Lambda, Bottles, Voodoo, NDA alum, NDA staff. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for being a part of this. Oh, NYCUDL. I apologize. NYUDL. All love. We know we love New York. Thank you all. We're gonna end our live stream so we can discuss who actually won this debate off Facebook. So this will be the end of our live stream. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. And check us out for our next debate next month, where we got a surprise for you. Take it easy, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
All right. We done streaming?
Yeah, we're off of Facebook.